It's just Jersey, man. We're a different breed. Place. Who doesn't want to win in Jersey?
What's up, everybody? We're back. John Forster here, Breakdown from the Barn, episode 22. I'm here as always, greatest mind in wrestling, Eric Winnuck. We got two legendary Penn greats from the 90s on, Jeremy Baylor from Jefferson fame and Ben Hatta, EIWA finalist. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Great. Thank you for having us.
Nice.
So John, I'll jump right in because obviously the first segment we talked a lot about you guys in the entertainment industry and gave a little background in terms of what you guys are working on. I think it's all great stuff. But if we could just take a step back and actually just get back into our old wrestling modes and start thinking in terms of the upcoming season. So you guys obviously with the Penn background, talk to us your thoughts. We actually asked Coach Goodell about this, the Rutgers Penn match, which has been long waited happening. I know we've been talking about it. And in my mind, it's going to be a great matchup now. You guys got top 20 guys up and down the lineup. I know I've mentioned the fact that I'm very close with the Composto family. So seeing CJ be so successful last year. So why don't you give us, each one of you, maybe Jeremy, you start, and Ben, just give us your thoughts on that UPenn Rutgers match, how you think it's going to shake out and any thoughts you might have on it.
I think it's going to be a close one. I think they're wrestling in, are we wrestling in Newark?
Yep.
Yeah. I got that one. I got that one on the docket. I'm definitely going to be there for that. I think Penn has a slight edge right now, just looking on paper, but paper means nothing. You can crumple it and throw it out the window when you get down there on the mat. So it's going to be a hard fought one. I think it'll be like a 6-4 type of split. I think could be 5-5. Bonus points could decide it, but Penn's bringing back a very young, hungry team. They had, I think, 9 qualifiers coming back, so it's going to be a much more seasoned team, and I think Rogers got these guys hungry. I know they're wrestling. I think we're wrestling Iowa as well in Iowa. We got a very tough schedule, a lot of top teams, but the Penn Rutgers match needed to happen. I'm glad it's happening, and I hope it is an annual thing.
Nice. What are your thoughts, Ben?
Yeah, I think it's great. Obviously Penn is young. They've got actually 10 qualifiers and 1 All-American. But Rutgers is tough too. And both these guys pull from the New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio area. So I'm sure it'll be a big hometown crowd regardless. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be tough. I think it's a good test for Penn. And like Jeremy said, they do have a tough schedule. Rogers sort of building that program back up. But I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great match, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and like you said, it's been a long time in the waiting, and I know we talked to Coach Goodell, the Penn side basically said, let's just wait till we feel strong. It's going to be a worthwhile match, which I think it is right now. And I agree with you guys. I think this is a tremendous matchup. I think the Princeton matchup between Rutgers has been going on for quite some time. That's become a bit of a rivalry, and it's very exciting. Obviously, in the past, it wasn't much of a rivalry when we wrestled Lehigh. But those nice local Northeast powers outside of Penn State, I think it's nice to have them. Obviously, Rutgers and Riders gone back and forth. So no, I agree with you guys. Getting Penn on the schedule, to me, I was excited about it. We got to hold serve, because if not, I'll hear from Clint Motter for the next year if we drop this one. So if we could just switch right back to kind of the entertainment stuff. So obviously that's what we want to hear from you guys, and let's get into Foxcatcher. And I want to hear your experiences with Foxcatcher. And I can tell you as a side note, watching the documentary with my wife several years ago, and I can tell you it was just a phenomenal piece of work you guys did there. I mean, just great stuff. I think it really got into the depth of what happened there. Really opens up into not just the personalities of the Schultz and everything, but just really what was going on from the onset. And, I've got something I want to get out of this that I think, if I won't say the positive that came out of the situation, but now that you have the rise of the RTCs, that I think wrestlers now have more opportunities. But I don't want to steal any thunder. So why don't you guys tell me about, what went into that and any experiences you might want to talk about, doing that documentary.
Yeah, well, Foxcatcher was the first RTC. It was literally. Okay.
No, go ahead, Jerry.
I was going to say you made a good point about the RTCs. That was really the first RTC.
Yep.
And that's why the U.S. got really good. It's why Penn got really good. Once I heard that I could train with Olympic athletes, I mean, there wasn't a question of where I was going to go to school. It was an easy ad for me to just take Penn as my school and move forward. Great institution. We had an Olympic training facility, and the Foxcatcher wrestlers were our coaches. You know, we had Dave Schultz in our room.
Yep.
We traveled to Foxcatcher quite a bit. You know, once you saw the film with your wife, and you know, a lot of the film is centered around Dave and John DuPont. I never felt comfortable around John. He was very socially awkward, and
Right.
I don't know. I got a weird feeling being around him. But it was great to be around, you know, all the athletes, you know, with Schultz and Dan Shade and Brian Dolph and Trevor Lewis. These are all of our coaches. So it was really a great experience. I learned a lot from those guys. And, you know, unfortunately, it was only a year and a half for us that we had with Foxcatcher. You know, Ben definitely spent a lot more time there, as his dad was, you know, Olympic coach, and his family was a lot more closer with the Schultzes. So I'm sure Ben has some pretty good experiences there as well.
Yeah. I mean, it was like Jeremy said, it was one of those sort of I don't know, feathering the cap for Penn that they had this Olympic training center in their backyard. I mean, they were able to get Brandon Slay strictly because of that. And he was, you know, one of the top recruits coming out of high school the year before. And I'm sure he had no idea where the University of Pennsylvania was. So it was definitely the carrot and that actually made us sort of not only forget that, you know, we're Ivy League, and I think we were like 24th in the country at that point, but when we left, I think we were ranked 9th. So having that facility to draw in those wrestlers to Penn, and you know, that what Roger Reyno was doing there during that time really helped, I think, that program out immensely. But my personal experience at Foxcatcher, yeah, they started a couple of years before, probably in '92 when the training center moved there officially. You know, and it was, you know, I would go there to visit with my dad, and you know, partake in practices and stuff like that. And like Jeremy said, he was just a weird cat. You know, you didn't want to sort of necessarily be around him. I don't think my dad necessarily wanted me to be around him, just because you didn't know what he was going to do, and you didn't want to be, I think, just anywhere near or annoy him. You know, just to bring any heat on anyone that you were associated with. So, but I mean, we talked about it recently, Jeremy and I, that there should be a podcast just on the stories that came out of there. You know, because I've seen things happen, you know, but heard secondhand more about the craziness that went on there. And so, yeah, those stories are definitely interesting, and a lot we didn't get to show or tell in the doc.
Yeah, there's a fine line between eccentric and dangerous. And I think they definitely kind of stowed that line. So yeah, I'm sure that you're absolutely right. You could, I can only imagine you can every week have a half-hour discussion about what went on there. On the good side too, like you guys said, just the level of talent that came through there, because what I got out of it is I don't think people realize what wrestlers had to go through to be successful in the international and the senior circuit. They're just, like I said, we talk about the RTC, it just didn't exist. So yeah, just I'm sure, like I said, you gotta look at the positives that came out of that. I think that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
the positive was the U.S. went to #1 in the world because of Foxcatcher, because, and you know, it's weird to say, but because of John DuPont, and without the ability for the wrestlers to just train, and that was their job. Their job was, you know, just like all the other athletes in the world that had their eyes set on winning medals in the Olympics. They were paid by their governments to go ahead and be athletes. And, you know, the wrestlers on the international stage, after graduating college, you're done. That's it. You got to go get a job and train every day. And that is not an easy thing to do. And once Foxcatcher was allowing our athletes to just focus specifically on their craft, well, look what happened. They started winning gold medals left and right, and they took out Russia. So definitely the reason why the U.S. became so powerful back then.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it also wasn't just I mean, and it's not like DuPont was this evil guy that set out to, create this team and then kill the main guy that was running it. He had a lot of issues himself, and
Sure.
he had a messed up childhood growing up that added to a lot of that psychosis. So it was just a lot of things happening that were probably unchecked by several different areas. But good came out of it, bad came out of it, but it's nothing that I think anyone could have controlled at that time.
Yeah, and I remember going to Penn in early high school or 8th grade and seeing Dave Schultz there in the wrestling room running clinics and everything, which was really cool to think that there were so many great athletes, right in the backyard of Philadelphia, which is really cool. So why don't we shift gears to that? That's the motivation in doing the film. But what goes into it? What goes in? Hey, we want to get this Foxcatcher documentary out. Walk us through a little bit about that process.
I think it's like any process of anything that you create. Someone has to have the idea first or the story, and then you've got to figure out how you're going to make that story, and then you've got to figure out who's going to help pay to help make that story, and then you got to get a group of people to help you make that story. So it was Nancy and the director started the film, and when we came on board, they were looking for the financing part of the film. And that's where Jeremy really stepped in and helped out, and actually brought in a bunch of other UPenn grads and wrestling team members who were, close with Dave and knew Foxcatcher and obviously wrestled for the coaches. And then it was filming it and editing it. And then Jeremy dealt with a lot of the financing part and the post-production, which was the selling of it. So I can let him speak to that.
Yeah, as you can see, there's a lot of different phases in production, and I don't like saying, but if there's no money, the film doesn't get made. And this was actually the film that was the easiest for me to raise money for, and that is just a testament to the guy that Dave Schultz was. It was pretty quick. We got a whole bunch of the ex-UPenn wrestlers in a room with the director and Nancy. And after that meeting, we raised all the money we needed for the film. And then just, part of my role was also keeping the director on track. Sometimes directors can get stuck in a specific part of the film that they want to tell a certain way, and if it doesn't look specifically exactly perfect for them, they get stuck in this zone, and you kind of got to pull them out. So that's kind of like the therapist role that I had for this film as well. But once we got most of the content down, and we had an editor rolling through it and started to come together, that's when we started approaching different entities to sell the film. And luckily one of the biggest in the business, Netflix, came to us and they gave us a nice offer for the film, and we ended up shooting it over to Netflix. So that was the selling of the film is definitely another intense part of the process, because we have guys that aren't just donating money. We run it as an investment. In any of our films that Ben and I do, we hope to show a return for our investors.
Sure.
And we'll talk a little bit more about that on some of the other stuff that we're doing.
Yeah, and I think that's an important distinction, right? It's not like people say, "Oh, it's all about the money," and it is a lot of times. It is all about the money, because if you don't have the money, you're not paying a producer, and people say that about everything, and it's like, well, a lot of it is, and you can't, you can't lose it, but it's not a GoFundMe, right? It's like you're getting the money in. You guys are putting the hard work, putting your nose to the grind, and your hope is to then turn that around and sell it, and then get money back to your investors. So that's a big distinction, rather than people just asking for for donations or for money. You're turning a profit here. I mean, talk about Netflix, big company. You talk about another big one, A&E. That's a big, that's a big channel out there. And Peacock, you guys are doing deals with them, which is very cool. So let's get into the other film I thought was really cool, the Angle documentary.
Excellent.
Really, again, got great in the wrestling from my standpoint. I loved it. I love the wrestling standpoint. I didn't know about his neck was that bad when he went to the trial. I thought that was very cool, and then got into his personal life. So why don't you tell us a little bit about about that one and that story and how that came together? Why don't you go first, Jeremy?
Yeah, so this was definitely a lead in to Wrestlers and Entertainment too, and it was the first kind of like proof of concept that Ben and I have that this idea would work. So after the success of Team Foxcatcher, we were approached by a director and another production company to come in and help them produce this Angle documentary. So director's young guy, first time director, just was very passionate about Kurt Angle's story. And Ben and I had the honor of actually watching some of his story at the Olympics in Atlanta. So I was very familiar with his on the mat accolades, not so much about the off the mat stuff. I mean, I knew he was a WWE wrestler. I didn't know about all the struggles that he had that obviously you guys saw in the A&E doc. But Ben and I left that meeting and we're like, yeah, this is something we can do. And obviously a part of Kurt's life was Team Foxcatcher. So we were definitely brought in to help with a lot of the wrestling, to help with a lot of the Team Foxcatcher story. And then, we ended up helping with, the entire film and producing the entire film with these guys. And I think we put out a great story. The A&E cut was, it was tailored a little bit more towards Kurt's WWE career, but that's because the WWE was the first purchaser of the film, who then resold the film to A&E. You mentioned Peacock. That's where you and the rest of the world will be able to see the director's cut, what Ben and I actually put together, a story that is going to have a little bit more of Kurt's wrestling, a little bit more of his family life. Obviously, you won't be interrupted by the commercials, and that's another reason why the film had to be edited a little bit for TV when you saw it on A&E. But it was a great experience. Kurt's a great guy. I was able to be on a couple of shoots with him, and he's just a great human being. And that's one of the things I like to do in this industry. Is I like to tell stories about wrestlers that are great humans, and Kurt is a great example of that. He's, as you saw, he's been through the ringer quite a few times, and somehow he is still walking and on top and helping other people as well, which is great. So I'll let Ben take it from here.
Yeah, I think like Jeremy's hinted or started to touch on was that, it's not just a wrestling story. We wanted to tell a story that, again, Foxcatcher wasn't just a wrestling story. It was, a story about, loss and murder and, the downfall of one man taking down another. So with Angle, it also had another side of not just the wrestling, but his WWE and the glory and the fame of celebrity, but then also the tragedy of addiction. And I think that was something that we wanted to also highlight. I have a family member who is an addict, recovering addict, and I think it was right around that time. And so it really was a moment of, let's get a broader story out than just wrestling. And again, the opioid epidemic was in full, swing when we were starting this film, and it's still affecting a lot of people today. So that's another again story that isn't wrestling, that reaches a broader audience. And if we can get that out there as well, then they can hitch a ride for the fun wrestling part. So we were fully invested, and we did the same sort of thing we did with Foxcatcher, but we were more hands-on and more involved at this time. So I think it turned out to be a great film.
Yeah, and I think the angle piece was just tremendous work. And as you guys mentioned, there wasn't a lot in terms of the wrestling, but I thought it was such a powerful segue into the rest of the documentary. I think the wrestling piece that opened up really set things up, because you really got to understand not just the personality, but what this individual, the drive he went through to get where he was. And I found it interesting that, which, I think I knew this because we talked about Gable Steveson going into WWE right away, striking what the iron was hot, when Vince McMahon basically offered him a 10-year multi-million-dollar deal, and he turned it down. And he turned it down because of the arrogance of, I'm a quote unquote real wrestler. Okay. I don't lose. Right. As he said, I was kicked out of the room. So, but I think the key here is, touching on his life. I didn't realize what his sister went through. And you talk about the opiates, obviously what she struggled with and what he struggled with. The father was, a borderline, alcoholic. And the addiction, the family, you could just see the tribulations of that family. And a lot of stuff I knew nothing about him. And I always think of Kurt Angle, it's true, the All-American, I won't call him the goofball, but almost, just his act when you see who he really is and what he went through. And it's amazing he was able to pull it off. I mean, there's an entertainer because there's a much different personality what he has. But the bottom line is, guys, I can't wait to see a more expanded view of the wrestling side of Kurt Angle. And I think people would like to know that about him. But I thought even the little bit that was there really set the documentary up quite well.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to that one on Peacock as well. I think there was a good amount of wrestling in it. It wasn't out. It was like split. I think it was the first hour was his Olympic wrestling, and the next hour is WWE. I would rather have like 2 hours of the Olympic, but I get it. WWE is popular to a lot of people, right? A lot of people love that stuff. So kind of catering to the non-wrestling audience. Like, what are your thoughts around that? I mean, how do we wrestlers are, very passionate, very big and passionate, but then it's still a smaller part of the entire audience, right? It's growing, but how do you cater to the non-wrestlers to get them interested in a film about wrestling?
Yeah, I think you tell a good story. And I think the first, the two stories we told, they're not like wrestling on the mat stories, right? You got murder, you got opioid use, you got, the death in the family, you got the accidents, you got the DUIs, you got all these different things that all the world can relate to, right? If you just throw a movie about a guy wrestling on the mat, it's going to change the channel, right? That's going to happen to anyone who doesn't want to watch the sport, but they want to watch a good story. They want to hear people overcoming obstacles. They want to see, they want to kind of feel some kind of connection with what they're watching. And in the stories that we're telling in, Team Foxcatcher and then also in Angle, you can relate to some of the stuff the guy's going through. Obviously, I never broke my neck 4 times, but I can relate to some of the stuff that Kurt went through. I didn't do 70 pills a day either, but there's plenty of addicts out there that have gone through this process, that have gone through withdrawal when he talks about that. And people can connect with that. And everyone loves a comeback story, so there's a lot of different elements to storytelling that can attract a wide audience. And you can have wrestling in the background or a wrestler going through it to kind of bring that sport into that great story. And I think that's how you get the everyday viewer hooked in. Everyone wants to see a good story. And if wrestling just sits in the background, great. But, obviously you saw how we interweaved wrestling into Kurt's story. And, that's how we tell it well. And we get people hooked in.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think the story is the key, because I can tell you with I mean, I'll go to the Foxcatcher movie itself, obviously not the documentary, but they were talking about it at the barbershop, and a couple of guys, they know my wrestling background. I remember my barber Carlos was like, yeah, just I saw that, and he was just blown away by the story, and it just tapping into that kind of non-wrestling audience, and just you're right, you got to have the right story, you got to have the right personality, and it's pointing off that, and let's, as we're going to be close to closing out, I want to go back to something we touched on in the first piece that we did with you guys. So you kind of already answered the question, but I kind of want to bring it back again. And that's talking about wrestlers and entertainment. Just talk to me about the ultimate goal. What is the goal you guys are trying to kind of accomplish here? I think you kind of touched on it in the first segment, but I think this is really critical. And I think this is what you guys want to get out there. So why don't you talk about that, wrestlers and entertainment, and kind of, what the goal there is. And Jeremy, if you want to kick off and, hand it over to Ben.
Yeah. We want to help out and network and bring all of the wrestlers and entertainment together to create great content, to really promote the sport and advance the sport of wrestling. It could be as small as getting a young wrestler out of school a job on a production. It could be as simple as reaching out to a guy who may have an uncle that is an entertainment lawyer. It could be a director who is struggling to raise the money for his film. He calls us, we help him raise the money, and now we get another great story told. It's little things like that, like just connecting the dots and making the sum of all the parts way greater, than just the parts. So that's in a nutshell what I think wrestlers and entertainment can do. I think anyone listening to the podcast that is interested in the sport and wants to advance the sport, instead of maybe investing in Apple or Tesla, maybe they invest in wrestlers and entertainment instead. That's down the road. Ben and I have some definitely some good plans on making this a much bigger project, and at some point we can get to the point where we are running almost a film fund where we can start creating our own content. But just little things, we'll take it little by little. If people are interested, happy to talk to them about it. And we just want to start connecting all those different wrestlers that are in entertainment right now, and see how we can make this a bigger situation.
Nice. How about you, Ben? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think Jeremy tapped on it in the sense of, it's not just about, people who want to get into entertainment. It's mostly about the people who are already in entertainment connecting us together, like the people who, we have an executive producer of the Mike and Molly show. He was a wrestler in high school. An executive producer of How I Met Your Mother. He was also a wrestler in high school. These are people who are already, in the business, tied in, have connections, are successful, and can help others. People like Mario Lopez, people like Chris Pratt, the Baldwin brothers, Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah.
You can go all up and down the line. There are many wrestlers, Steve Buscemi, who are in the entertainment industry, who have connections that when others can come together and we can create sort of a network of, hey, we're making this film, like say the next Foxcatcher, and we're looking to find a studio that will, look to shop this around. How can we make those connections? And then it goes into other branches, like Jeremy mentioned, of entertainment lawyers, producers, directors. It doesn't have to be the actors, anywhere down the line. And then eventually create a network broad enough where it expands to create opportunities for others, as well as finance, produce, and put out wrestling projects, or not even just wrestling projects, but wrestlers who have projects that might be, other based. They don't have to be strictly based around the sport of wrestling. So it's just bringing together the common sport and the common industry ties that we might all have.
Yeah,
it's funny. I always forget about Billy Baldwin.
Mario Lopez, big jiu-jitsu match announced yesterday, taking on Tom Hardy on Flow Grappling. That's going to be fun, right?
Nice.
No, John, I was going to say, it's Ben, you brought up, Billy Baldwin, and it's funny. I was thinking about all the people in this industry, and I keep forgetting about Billy, and obviously him being at the Big Tens, the Nationals, and being involved with that. So yeah, some of those names you throw out are some pretty high profile people. So I think it's key to kind of like highlight, what's out there already, and we can build on that. And Ben, just keeping going things with you. Can you tell us a little about your latest project? So St. Ed's versus Walsh Jesuit. Can you give us a little bit? I think that's something you're excited about, and kind of go into some details with that.
Yeah, 100%. It's so my third wrestling documentary, and it's about I don't know how many people know about the St. Ed's and Walsh Jesuit rivalry in the 1990s, but they were fighting over the national championship almost every single year. And they were number 1 and 2 in the country, and their dual meets drew 3,000, 4,000, fans standing room only. ESPN covered 2 or 3 of their dual meets. They're 30 miles apart from each other. So it's a sports rivalry. It's a story of the 90s. It's a story of family. It's a story of David versus Goliath, and it's an underdog story, so again, it has a lot of different elements to it. There were actually multiple deaths that took place during the 10-year decade, the decade that, this sort of battle went on. And it's ultimately a war story. It's a story of 2 teams that were led by 2 vets who had 2 completely different experiences, and from 2 different sides of the tracks these schools came. It's so we're out filming the interviews this past month, and we're in the process of going into post. We're still in the process, like Jeremy mentioned before, about finishing the financing for the film. And again, this is another example of sort of wrestlers entertainment. This film is a wrestling story produced by wrestlers, financed by wrestlers. It's been a great time, and the story gets deeper and deeper and thicker the more I dive into it and learn sort of the other side of the story. So I'm excited, and I'm really excited about getting this out there, because I think people are going to really enjoy it, and it's going to be very full. It's not just going to be a wrestling story.
Cool. Good stuff. And real quick, John, because I know you got the most important question of the entire segment coming up. Real quick, Ben, you mentioned something real quick. I want to get this out. People don't realize the excitement of a high school wrestling match, especially a meet against, just rival teams, in kind of, I talked about with Scott Goodell being in Phillipsburg in the pit, and when Jefferson wrestled them. And listen, I wrestled at Rahway. You don't think of Rahway as a powerhouse, but we would pull in, hundreds of people at a match. It doesn't seem like a lot, but when you get them in a tight gym against a rival, I don't think people realize the energy that gets produced in a high school wrestling match, especially when both schools are in there. You think of Hoosiers, you think of like the basketball story, but I've seen more intense environments, and people coming out to wrestling matches who had nothing to do with wrestling, didn't even really understand the sport, but they came to one of those rival matches at home. It's just electric. So I can tell you right now, I'm looking forward to seeing this, but I think a lot of people, if they catch on, might draw them to the sport, because you're absolutely right. Those rivalries with that many people is really electric.
No, and some big names I know is on those teams in the 90s. Joe Haskett, Gray Maynard, right? I think, Roger Chandler, he gave me a beating at Midlands one year.
Andy Rovat,
yeah,
Roger Chandler,
yeah, big
Malika, Rick Hepp, and just to add to that, I'll just throw a little bit of a teaser out there. But to the madhouse of the rivalry, the stress and the craziness of one of those dual meets between St. Ed's was so bad that a referee died during the 4th match of the dual meet, and it was canceled. That's how crazy it was. Wow. And so that's part of the story.
That's right.
Lots to unpack with this one.
I mean, that's a 30 for 30 right there.
100%. I mean, great people that came out of it, great stories. Yeah. And again, a broader story. I think it's one of family, and I think it's one of, a David versus Goliath. So I'm excited. I'm really excited about this one.
So I'm sure a lot of news is going to come out with wrestling and entertainment. Anyone listening to this wants to be involved. How should they get in touch with you guys? What's the best way?
Yeah, I think we'll drop our information with you guys after this. If they want to get in touch with you guys, the podcasters. That's fine with me. I'm happy to have you guys give them my email, my cell phone, and happy to chat.
Yeah, send inboxes to me. I'll get the message over. So, like Eric said, I couldn't not ask this question. Coming from Buna, we talk about St. Ed's and Walsh Jesuit, but the Big Bear in the '90s too is a small Group 2 school in Jefferson that was ranked #1 in the country. They were David versus Goliath, he said. We had a little team from South Jersey, Buna, go up there and made the state finals, beat Kittatinny, and we went up against Jesuit, where we went up against Jefferson. And, Jeremy, you were a returning state champ coming out there. We had our guy, Bruce Hall of Famer from Buna for football, but had like an 8-8 record. He went out there, we were down on scorecards, and you talk about the electric of a dual meet. Our fans went crazy. He got up 8-0, 2 cradles. I'm saying, I'm not a ref, Jeremy. A lot of people in there, though, said it was a pin. We talked about it on the last show. Kenneth Barber, he commented, he said he was in the gym. He thought it was a pin. I don't know his credentials. What do you think, Jeremy? Was that a pinfall in 1994?
No, it was not. But I tell you what, I was talking to Ben about this the other day after I spoke with you offline. I think I was up 2-8 for that match. He got me in a cradle, and it was after a shot, so generally I'm not scared if someone cradles me after, off of a shot. Normally just, pull the leg back, break the lock. I could not break this guy's lock. And then he horsed me over, and I'm like, oh boy. But no, freestyle possibly, maybe, but, for a scholastic pin, I don't think I was in that much danger. And then 10 or 20 seconds later, Bruce Hall found out the hard way.
Yeah, he did. He was an outstanding athlete. You talk about, genetics. That guy was a good athlete, and
he was strong. He was strong.
He put his mind to wrestling. He would have been a great one. But you guys had that stellar team there. There was a lot of big names on there. Hughes, Tanis, all those guys. A lot of studs up and down. Great segment, guys. Make sure you check out Wrestlers and Entertainment. Be sure that's coming. Watch Foxcatcher on Netflix. Be sure to check out Angle. Be sure to follow the show. Spotify. We're on all the platforms. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Make sure you follow us. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and our NIL deal, World Junkie, 15% off. Jefferson had some good World Junkie gear a couple of years ago. Get that Barn15 promo code. We'll see you guys later, and be sure to check out the movies, guys. We're going to Hollywood. I might go to Hollywood. I might quit my day job and go out there with that. But great segment, guys.
Good job, guys. Well done.
Thank you. Take care, guys.